Picking the right first dirt bike can be the difference between having fun riding with your friends and family or having an accident and getting hurt. And yet, so many new riders start on the wrong bike, whether it's due to ignorance, lack of knowledge, or maybe they were pressured into it by their riding buddies. That's why I want to show you why it's so important to start on the right bike. What will happen if you start on the wrong bike, like so many other beginners, and then the best dirt bikes for beginners for you to start on. Before I start, I want to offer you a free guide on learning the proper techniques to safely ride with confidence. So if you're brand new to dirt biking, just getting back into it, this will help you become a better rider faster. You can get it at motocrosshideout.com/free lessons. So it's so important to start on a proper beginner bike because if you're just new to dirt biking, it's hard to learn how to ride properly and safely. It's hard enough learning to ride. So why would you make it harder by choosing a bike that's too powerful or too tall? You want something that's easy to ride, easy to use, learn the clutch with, to shift gears, something that's affordable. Maybe you're on a budget. You want something that's easy to maintain. You probably don't want to be working on it more than you want to ride it. So just something that's super simple, comfortable, has soft suspension. You don't need a top of the line fast bike, best suspension if you're just starting out, because you can't even take advantage of that. It's so much easier to start on a bike that's easier to ride. And in fact, I learned the hard way because I was getting into trail riding. I started getting serious and I kept going with motocross bikes, and it just wasn't, it was fun, but I just couldn't have the confidence and control to ride more challenging trails and try and keep up with my friends because the bike was hard to handle. It's just the power was fun and snappy, but that made it hard to ride off-road where there was maybe less traction. The hills were steeper, bigger rocks and logs. The engine and suspension on a high-performance bike they just make it harder to ride if you're still a beginner or even intermediate. So if you start on the wrong bike, you're more likely to get out of control because learning proper clutch and throttle control it's hard. When I teach new riders, they always struggle with the clutch and throttle because it's so sensitive. And if you're starting on a bike that has a lot of power, it's just going to be that much easier to get out of control. So when you're letting out the clutch and you just give it a little bit of throttle, it's going to want to snap up and do a wheelie, get out of control. So that really intimidates a lot of new riders, especially if you're afraid of getting hurt and you've never been on a motorcycle before. So it's just so much easier to start on one that has smooth, predictable, and less power because you aren't going to be worried about trying to keep the bike under control. Rather, you can focus on learning the basic techniques of clutch, throttle, balance, shifting gears, just staying up on two wheels rather than trying to control the bike or if you're short like me, trying to balance on one tippy toe. So that's what can happen if you start on a bike that's too tall, too fast. And then motocross bike or enduro bike, they have stiffer suspension. So if you're new to riding, you're not going to be riding as fast, which means that the suspension, you're only going to be using the top few inches of travel. This means it's going to be really stiff and harsh. It's just not going to be as comfortable. It's not going to absorb the small bumps and impacts that you're going to be doing when learning to ride. You can only take full advantage of that extra suspension travel if you're riding aggressively, riding faster. So just starting out on a high performance bike is just it's not worth it. A lot of riders, they think they'll grow into it. Maybe their buddies tell them that, oh, you don't need a little beginner bike. You'll just outgrow it too fast. Well, most new riders, they don't come into dirt biking knowing how to do everything. So this really gets them into trouble because they think they can control the bike in a straight line, but then once they start getting onto a track or onto the trails, it's just so much harder to stay in control. And then this causes you to tense up, to your arms pump up, and then that makes it harder to hang on. And then then you're just more likely to get out of balance and fall over. So choosing the wrong bike, there's just so many things that makes it harder for learning to ride. And that's why I always recommend that you start on a bike that's easier to ride, less power if you're a new rider, because you're just more likely to get hurt. And I hate new riders getting hurt and then they just give up dirt biking, and there's no way they're gonna give it a chance again, most likely. So the best dirt bikes to start out on are 4-stroke trail bikes generally. So the trail bikes, they got lower seat height. They have a simple air-cooled 4-stroke engine. They have good, smooth torque down low, so it's easy to learn the clutch with, because whereas on a motocross bike, when you're letting out the clutch, it does not have much power right off idle. So it's just going to either die or you're going to have to rev it up a lot to keep it going. And then this is just more likely for you to whiskey throttle it, loop out. So the trail bike has good, smooth power, and the suspension is nice and soft. It's going to be comfortable to ride. And then they're simple, they're easy to maintain, they're usually more affordable, they're cheaper just because the technology is not quite as good, but that doesn't matter if you're a new rider. So what dirt bikes are good for beginners? So it's based on your height mainly, because as a new rider, the height of the bike makes a little more difference, because you don't have the balance or skills to stay up on the pegs. So you want to be able to touch the ground with 1 foot. You don't need to touch with 2, whether you're new or experienced. So based on your height, the smallest adult-sized dirt bike would be a 125 4-stroke, such as the Honda CRF 125F. That's their latest trail bike. And then going up from there, you got the Yamaha TTR 125 LE. So the L stands for large wheel, E stands for electric start. It's just the wheels are a little bit bigger. The seat height's just a little bit taller than the standard 125. And then you got the Kawasaki KLX 140L. It's just a little bit more power. And then it's about the same height as the 125 large wheel. But then Kawasaki also has the KLX 140G. I think they changed the name of it again to like GR or RG or something like that. But that's the same frame and engine as the regular KLX 140. But then it has the full-size wheels, the 21 18-inch wheels. And so the bigger wheels, they're going to make the seat height a little bit taller. But then they also handle a little bit better riding on the trails, because the bigger wheels, they go over logs and rocks and the rough terrain more easily. And then going up from there, you got the KLX 230R. That's it's a full-size bike, but it's several inches shorter than an enduro bike or a motocross bike. And this is really good for teens and adults, whether you have short legs. So 230 is a good size for if you're 5'2" to 5'10". It can range quite a bit. And then Honda has the CRF 250F, which is pretty much the same size. It's just the engine's a little bit bigger. The 250 and 230, both really good bikes for adults, young adults, even old guys. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're under 6 foot, you'll probably fit the 230 well. They're a little bit heavy. That's probably the biggest complaint. But as long as you're over 5'2", and you have a little bit of strength, the weight really isn't that big of a deal when you're riding. You won't notice it until you have to pick it up off the ground. And even then, the low center of gravity makes it a little bit easier to pick up, as well as handle a lot better than the taller bikes, at least at low speeds. And then if you're a bigger guy, like 5'10", 6 foot, 6'2", or you're just a bigger dude, you want a little bit more power, I still don't recommend starting out on a 450 or enduro bike, just because they still have too much power and they're a little bit more maintenance. So the KLX 300R, that's a really good beginner bike for bigger guys to start on, because it has a little bit more power. It's slightly taller, but the power is still really good, really manageable, smooth, torquey power. It doesn't have quite the snap that an enduro bike or motocross bike does. So those are the latest beginner bikes. If you want to start on one that's cheaper, a used one that's more budget oriented, pretty much all the brands have similar size 4-stroke air-cooled bikes that are discontinued, such as like the Honda CRF 230F, the XR 200, or the XR 250. Those are all really good bikes. So the next thing after that, if you want to stay safe and become a better rider, is learning the proper techniques. And I want to show you that with my free guide. It's the 12 basic techniques to riding off-road with confidence and control. So you learn how to stay balanced, how to use your whole body from your feet to your eyes and your head to stay in control on the bike, to use less energy, and to prevent falling. Stay up. I want you to stay up on two wheels. So you can download this guide at motocrosshideout.com/free lessons. And now I want to hear from you. Do you agree that it's best to start on a slower dirt bike as a beginner? Because a lot of other people that have been riding, they think it's fine to start out on a fast 302 stroke or 454 stroke. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Kelly Fager from Motocross Hideout. Learn more, ride more.